So this is Module 3, and this module is all about decision-making, conflict management, and communication. And you'll see there it says Chapter 1 and 21 of Marquise and Houston and Chapter 10 of Mason. I'm almost sure that's not correct, simply because as we had the Mason textbook converted to an e-book, some of the chapters have moved around. So please refer to the syllabus for the correct chapter. Okay, so again, I have to unfortunately apologize for the graphics. But again, you will have hard copies of these that you can print out as well. So this slide is really about looking at definitions. And so as we think about the concept of decision-making, recognize that decision-making is intimately linked to leadership and really has to be examined to provide a foundation so that we can ensure that our nurses understand how these processes are important to organizations, as well as how to utilize decision-making in its involvement in policy processes. And so related but keenly different are the concepts also of problem-solving and critical thinking. Hence, decision-making is, which you can't read there, but what it should say is choosing a particular course of action, the thought process of selecting a logical choice from available options. And that's kind of what decision-making is all about. And then underneath that, it says problem-solving. And so problem-solving is considered a component of decision-making. It's a systematic process that focuses on analyzing a difficult situation. One of my favorite concepts is critical thinking, and you will hear us throw this concept around quite often in nursing. And it's funny, in my PhD program, we talk about this concept a lot, and it's interesting if you start to look at definitions, you'll find that there are various definitions, and so it makes us really wonder if we really know what critical thinking is. And if we don't know what it is, how do we actually teach it? But according to your text, critical thinking is also known as reflective thinking, and it's related to evaluation and has a broader scope than decision-making and problem-solving. So it's much bigger than both decision-making and problem-solving. The mental processes of actively, skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating information to reach an answer or conclusion. So when we talk about critical thinking, it's something that, again, we talk a lot about in nursing, but as you can see, there's lots of words there. It's kind of a word smorgasbord to really define what critical thinking is, and it's simply that way because there's so many definitions of it. So we're going to utilize this particular definition that's in your textbook. So let's break down some of the critical elements, if you will, of what decision-making is. So decisions, although, well thought out, using any specific method that you may think of, like change, have some unintended consequences. And we talked about this when we did speak about change. So anytime you make a decision, anytime you make a change, you have to recognize that, not all of the I's are going to be dotted and T's are going to be crossed. We're all human, and so we might miss something. And so decision-making, the nature of it, is very similar to change in that respect. So in spite of all this, we have to pay special attention to any of the critical elements whenever possible. So, for example, defining the objectives clearly, that's pretty important. Just making sure we're really reflecting on the purpose of the decision, and it's easy to get lost in terms of, trying to stay on track with certain things. So, gathering data requires involving people by asking the right questions. What is the setting? What is the problem? Where is the problem? When is it a problem? Who's affected by the problem? Why is it happening? What are the causes of the problem? Can some of this be prioritized? What are the basic underlying issues? What are the areas of conflict? And then what are some of the consequences of problems? And then which is the most serious? So defining the objectives requires really asking a lot of these types of questions to make sure that we are defining our objectives according to the philosophy of the organization, the philosophy of our environment in which we live if we're talking about policy. And if we think a little deeper on this, this helps us get to the correct objectives when we're trying to think about policies. So the next thing to do is to gather the data. So when gathering data, it's important to note that human values underpin perception. So a note of caution is always needed to ensure that personal preferences and those of others are not mistaken for facts. And so it's important to actively seek information from others by asking the right questions, and then pay attention to yourself as you're gathering the data. It's very easy to be biased and bring in your own perception. So you have to kind of step into this with an open mind. You don't want to make mistakes and think that values are facts. And this, again, is something that could easily happen. We see this with research as well. As a qualitative researcher, this is something that I often struggle with, because as I'm gathering data from folks, it's really difficult. I have to be completely honest about where my perceptions lie so that I can kind of step aside and be able to actually hear theirs. And lastly, you want to take the time that's necessary. You want to generate many alternatives. It's important to move away from the status quo in order to examine varying alternatives. Additionally, one should also consider the alternative of not doing anything. Sometimes we get so caught up on we have to do something that we forget that sometimes not doing anything is not such a bad idea, especially if you've not really thought through things very well. So techniques that are helpful coming up with varying viewpoints is that of brainstorming, in which all possible alternatives are discussed. Even those that may be completely off target or may seem kind of crazy, sometimes to think out of the box, we have to do that. So this allows people to step out of there. So sometimes when brainstorming, you want to say, let's just go with the flow, with whatever happens. So generating many alternatives involving others in the process, increasing the number of people, increases the number of alternatives, and that's a good thing. Thinking logically. So by thinking through the information and the alternatives and avoiding several pitfalls, this leads to faulty logic, including overgeneralizing. So this requires that a person not believe in it always works that way, or it's always been this way, and this is the way we've always done it. So this type of thinking can cause us to, again, have a lot of issues. So we want to make sure that we're just not faltering to what we used to do. So we want to try to make sure that we're thinking logically about all of these things. And then choose and act decisively. So in the end, one has to make a choice, and actively and decisively. Like mentioned earlier, most decisions have long-term consequences and far-reaching effects that aren't usually seen in the very beginning. So we have to be okay with that. So we have to be okay with the fact that sometimes we're going to have to make changes regardless, and that whenever we make a decision, even though it seems like it's a great decision, we still want to evaluate it. So we can learn from making decisions sometimes that aren't the best decisions as well. So this slide should be titled, which you can't see it because of the formatting, is it says individual variations in decision making. And what's listed there is gender, values, life experience, and then individual preference. And basically what we really have to think about when it comes to decision making is to understand that everybody brings their historical perspective, their life experience, their role as an individual into any decision making process. And so sometimes it's better to just kind of get those out on the table and discuss them. Research has suggested that because of the distribution of brain matter for men and women, that this distribution determines how differently each may process information and make decisions. So basically, men have a 6.5 times more gray matter in the brain than women, but women have about 10 times more white matter than men. So researchers believe that white matter may allow a woman's brain to work faster than a man's, which is something that I would certainly argue for in thinking about how my husband and I make decisions. And when we consider the concept of values in terms of thinking about individual variables in decision making, we have to understand that no matter how objective the criteria is, that value judgments will always play a role in how decisions are made. So values influence perception and information gathering processes, and then the final outcome as well, which problems will be sometimes addressed or ignored. So again, it's really important for us to kind of discuss values to begin with when we're thinking about decision making, to kind of brainstorm about people's perspective before we actually get into the decision making processes. So in terms of life experience, each person brings these experiences into the decision-making task. So this would include your level of education, your beliefs about autonomy, as well as, your own experiences with decision-making. And we have to understand that this is going to be a part, whether we do it consciously or subconsciously, of any interaction when we're trying to make decisions. And then individual preferences, just depending on where you are in your life and what circumstances are currently impacting you, may pose a preference to how you make a decision. So, for example, if you're having financial difficulty in your life, you may be more cautious when it comes to decisions that have to do with money. So we have to also consider these sort of things. And again, it's good to have dialogue about these things if at all possible. So now we've just talked about the fact that women and men may think differently, which I don't think any of us really needed a text to tell us that, but that is the case, and now we see that science is somewhat speaking to that. So Roger Sperry and Ned Herman, these guys were both Nobel Prize winners and researchers, and what they really focused on was critical thinking. And they suggested that there are 4 different thinking styles based on brain dominance. And so the upper left are the analytical thinkers, and then the upper right are the big picture thinkers. The lower left are highly organized and detail-oriented, and then that bottom corner, there's the emotional thinkers. So I think if each of us were to look at these, we might find places where we would fit. But I'd have to beg the question that I think we might all fall into some of these categories in various times, just kind of depending on what's going on and what the task is at hand. So what you're looking at now, and unfortunately can't read all of, the top of the slide says decision-making tools, and then you'll see there decision grids. And so where you see the far left corner, it says alternatives, and you have number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then there's a column that says financial effect, a column that says political effect, a column that says departmental effect, column that says time and decision. So a decision grid is simply a tool that allows for visualization of alternatives, and it allows you to compare each against the same criteria. And so these tools become very useful when we're thinking about the fact that, we have all of these variances because of who we are as men, who we are as women, our individual experiences and expectations and all of that. And so using a tool kind of helps with framing things in the way of taking out some of those perceptual influences. Here is another decision-making tool, and this is called a decision tree. Decision trees are great at highlighting decisions that are usually tied to outcomes of other events. So, and like we said, most decisions are tied in some ways and some things that we don't anticipate. And so decision trees kind of help with that. So the above decision tree, or the tree that you're looking at right now, compares the cost of hiring regular staff with the cost of hiring temporary employees. So here the decision is whether to hire extra nurses at their regular salary, where it says hire regular staff, or to perform, in order to perform outpatient procedures on this particular unit, or to have nurses available to the unit on an on-call basis and then pay them call and overtime wages. So here you might want to even go back to one of the other tables and kind of look at what the financial impact might be. But here's a way to lay things out and kind of look at alternative actions. And so in that middle area where it says alternative actions, you may have more than 2. And so you can begin to drill down based on a decision tree, looking